Okay, Chair,
Are we ready?
you have a quorum, sir.
All right, so I'm going to call this meeting of the City of West Hollywood Rent Stabilization Commission meeting to order a little late. I want to thank everyone for their patience. Commissioner Maggio, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Secretary, can we have a roll call?
Just a moment, sir. So, excellent.
Oh, Roger's not here. Yep. Who's gonna?
Secretary, I'll let you take the roll call and I'll run the meeting. Oh, that's me. I apologize. Apologies for that, sir, and apologies that I'm going to probably take this out of order. I'm going to go in the circular with the upper left corner and around. So, Commissioner Charity.
Here.
Commissioner Marks.
Here.
Commissioner Maggio.
Present.
Vice Chair Topchin. Oh, Commissioner Kerpes.
Here.
Vice Chair Topchin.
Here.
Chair Bergstein.
Present. Did we lose Karen? Commissioner O'Keefe?
Admitted Karen at the moment.
Yep, okay. There she is.
Hey, I'm back.
Okay.
And Commissioner O'Keefe.
Are you present?
I am present.
We have a quorum.
Little different tonight, Commissioner O'Keefe. I'll be handling the secretary's role.
Okay. So moving on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Everyone had a chance to review this evening's agenda. Do you have any suggestions, changes? If not, I'll
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Acting Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Again, we're going to take this in circular fashion. So starting with Commissioner Charity.
Yes.
Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
Commissioner Maggio.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerpes.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Keefe.
Yes.
Vice Chair Topchin.
Aye.
And Chair Bergstein.
Aye. You're approved. Moving on to item 5, approval of the minutes from the August 13, 2020 meeting. We all had a chance to review those. Do you have any changes or corrections? If not, entertain a motion to accept as submitted.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of August 13th, 2020.
Okay.
I would second that.
Mr. Acting Secretary.
Commissioner Charity.
So abstain due to my absence.
Commissioner Marks.
Yes.
Commissioner Maggio.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerpes.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Keefe.
Yes.
Vice Chair Topchin.
Aye.
And Chair Bergstein.
Yes, they're approved. Item 6, Mr. Acting Secretary, are you aware of any public speakers not on agenda items that are in the waiting room?
I'm not aware of any public speakers not in the waiting room, no.
Okay. If anyone is watching and they'd like to speak during public comment, we'll have a second time for that towards the end of the meeting, so you're welcome to dial in at that point. Moving on to item 7, the manager's report. Mr. Noonan.
Thank you, and good evening, commissioners. A review of the look-ahead calendar briefly shows that at your next meeting, September 10th, you do have 2 appeals scheduled. And then at the following meeting, September 24th, you have 1 appeal scheduled. We don't have any other appeals scheduled at this time on the calendar. And so on the 24th, we are preparing an item that is information on the rent stabilization ordinance's deposit interest formula. And then on October 8th, we have 2 informational items. It's one on subletting under the rent stabilization ordinance, and another is a discussion that has been requested by the commission on broken elevators. that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Noonan at this point? We'll move on to item 8, commission comments. Commissioners, any comments? I just have one. I was able to contact Mr. Noonan over the weekend. I have a friend that is entering into a voluntary buyout, and I suggested he look at the paperwork and framework that the city offers. It was my first time reviewing these documents, and didn't realize there's also an interactive map that you can kind of hover your cursor over, and it shows units that have entered into buyouts, how many bedrooms, the amount that was paid, and any conditions such as, don't have to repaint, they don't get their security deposit back, but it's kind of interesting to see the range of what property owners have been paying for voluntary buyouts. So Mr. Noonan, I thank you for passing information on to me for the West Hollywood resident. With that, we'll go on to our appeals. Do we want to bring in, I know we have the landlord present. I'm not sure the tenant for D4354.
Just a moment. Before we do that, I'd like to see if the commission secretary was able to join the meeting.
Okay.
Hearing no. Commission secretary?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will go ahead and bring the parties in now. The commission secretary will take the roll call going forward. So D4354, admitting Sharice Mickelson. Admitting oh, I apologize. I think I brought in the wrong person here. Let me move this person out. And okay, are both parties for D4354 CD4 present?
Yeah, hi, this is Steve for the landlord, Steve Short.
Great. And Sharice, could you unmute yourself and just make sure that you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you. We have both parties present, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So just a reminder of how this process works, although I'm sure you're both familiar. Our staff attorney, Ms. Regan, will make a report to the commission. At that point, the commissioners will have the opportunity to ask questions of Ms. Regan. And at the conclusion, we'll go into your comments. Since this appeal was filed by Ms. Michelson, you have a total of 5 minutes to speak, and you can split your time between initial comments. And if you want to reserve some time for rebuttal, just let us know when you start speaking how you'd like to split up your time. And Mr. I think it's Levin, you have 5 minutes total, no time for rebuttal. And with that, Ms. Regan.
Thank you. This concerns the landlord's request for a compliance determination regarding the cleanliness of the common area and especially the back walkway area. The landlord submitted evidence that the hearing examiner's order has been complied with, including invoices and a number of photographs. The tenant objected to the request by the landlord. The hearing examiner weighed all of the evidence and concluded that the landlord had in fact complied with the hearing examiner's order and restored the rent. The tenant has appealed this determination, and staff recommends that the commission affirm the hearing examiner's decision because there is substantial evidence in the record supporting the hearing examiner's conclusion that the landlord has complied with the order. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Regan at this time? I just have just for clarification, Ms. Regan, there are documents in the file pertaining to, allegations of law enforcement or tenancy or many issues not dealing with the evidence that the hearing examiner was presented with. I'm assuming that all of those things are superfluous and not to be considered in tonight's appeal. Would that be correct?
Correct,
Thank
yes.
you. Commissioners, any questions at this time for Ms. Regan? So I do want to just talk to both parties, saying that there is, just to stick to the facts that were presented at the hearing. Anything else about in police reports or allegations of any personalities or name calling has no place in this appeal. So I'm going to urge you to stick to what was presented to the hearing examiner. If you do veer off course, I will interrupt you to stop that line of questioning. I will not stop the timer, so you'll just be losing some of your time. With that, Ms. Michelson, how would you like to divide up your time?
I have written something and I timed it at about 4 minutes. So I would like to take 4 minutes to read it and then have 1 minute to rebut if that's possible.
Sure. And just for the record, just state your name and city of residence, and then you begin.
My name is Sheris Michelson, and my city of residence is the city of West Hollywood. The landlord has still not cleaning the back of the building, which the hearing examiner ordered to be done to have the rent reduction be reversed. The landlord provided invoices to the city from a Stephen Fernandez, who apparently, according to the landlord, performs the building's cleaning. But when I asked the worker who was flooding the area around my unit recently with water what his name was, it wasn't Stephen Fernandez. Hence, I believe the invoices the landlord provided to the city as evidence that cleaning is being performed at the back of the building are fraudulent. Please note that the landlord didn't provide evidence of deposited checks written by Mr. Fernandez from the bank, receipts, or any other real evidence that could have easily been provided to the city to show real employment of Mr. Fernandez's services. Also, I dispute that the images the landlord offered to the city were from different days, as the date printed on them isn't in alignment with what my cell phone camera or what a cell phone camera includes. My security camera and I have only ever seen the landlord photographing the property using a cell phone. To prove the images were authentic, the landlord could have included the real time and date stamp that phone cameras provide, but he didn't. In understanding that the worker who was flooding the area around my unit with water is who the landlord is referencing as our complex's cleaner, I asked this worker about what he told the landlord related to the incident that he reported to the city. The worker told me he never reported that anyone screamed or yelled at him, only that he had heard someone talking and reported that, but he didn't know where it was coming from.
I'm going to interrupt you.
So at no-
You're attempting to bring in evidence that is not in the record. So any conversations you've had since the hearing with any employees is not germane to this issue. So
Okay. Put bluntly, there isn't cleaning being performed 3 times a week at the back of the building, as the landlord has dishonestly reported. When the landlord floods the area in front of my unit with water, he doesn't do so in a uniform manner, where let's say he applies water to all surfaces, such as to the staircase or flooring in the area, which would point to perhaps an odd method of cleaning them. For example, he doesn't flood the walkway that is behind my unit, which is an area where tenants and workers walk and where garbage has been seen and which could stand to be cleaned. The landlord doesn't flood the back pathway with water, which runs along the back of the building and passes in front of the area that my unit sits above, which could really use it, as this might remove some of the dog feces, heavy dirt, and dried on vomit on that surface. No, the flooding of water is only done in one area, from directly above and in front of my unit, which warps and stains the wood flooring in front of my unit and my only door as the water hits my door and enters my unit from under my door, which makes it difficult for me to open my door because it's swollen with water. The images I provided of heavy dirt from worker boot prints from the area of the building that runs east-west, taken on March 15, 2020, and from the area that runs north-south, taken on April 12, 2020, show an accurate account of the state of things with regard to any type of cleaning at the back of the building. Thus, to summarize, the landlord isn't maintaining the common area cleanliness at the back of the building, as he claims, nor is he taking all acts reasonably necessary to perform this maintenance. And the rent reduction for tenants should remain in place until he complies with the hearing examiner's order. To be clear, cleaning means regularly removing dirt, debris, and garbage using appropriate products and methods, and possibly even sanitizing areas. This is not being done. In fact, the dog feces issue is so bad at the back of the building that we get thick flies in that area, so much so that lantern-looking fly traps have been peppered along the back pathway to deal with the issue. They trap the flies and they die inside, but no one empties them out, and it causes a terrible smell. Again, the back pathway is now my only method to get to my unit, since the landlord blocked my second method of fire escape with a padlocked wooden gate and metal fence. Please restore the rent reduction until the landlord has complied with the hearing examiner's order. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, how much time does she have remaining for her rebuttal?
1 minute and 18 seconds.
Good timing, thank you.
Thank
Sir,
you.
If you would just state your name and city of residence for the record, and then you may begin. You have 5 minutes. Mr. Short?
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Steve Short, Los Angeles. Thank you. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. I think Roger Vinland gave you my summary statement. It's a 3-pager. It's really 1 page of my argument and then 2 pages of evidence. And all this stuff is already in the record, but I'm just going to review it really quickly. The evidence will show and does show that we hired a new cleaning company in April 2019. The evidence also shows that we're cleaning the property 3 days a week now when we used to clean it 2 days a week. And we did that subsequent to the hiring of the new vendor. Also submitted 4 months of the most recent vendor invoices. That was December 2019 to March 2020. At the time, those are the 4 most recent. And they showed 3 times weekly service. And per the hearing examiner's compliance determination dated May 1, the tenant does not dispute that we clean the property 3 days a week. We as landlords submitted 46 recent pictures from February 10 to March 27 at various times of the day in various lighting, various angles, which show how clean the back of the property is. And just to remind everybody, the back of the property is the area in question. That's the area that the rent reduction was granted for in the past. Just to talk about the tenant's pictures, just real quick. Per the hearing examiner, the tenant submitted 4 undated pictures with no useful context. And if you look at your packet, you'll see she submitted 4 pictures. One of them was some supposedly dirt footprints, but no after pic. If there was another picture to go along with that saying that 4 days later that dirt was still there, then we might have something to talk about. But one picture of some boot prints does not mean the property is dirty all the time. We can't keep it perfect 100% of the time, but we do clean it 3 times a week. There's also 3 pictures of one area of concrete where she purports to show dirt on the concrete, but to me it just looks like discoloration. And if you look at the picture that's really close up of that area, you can tell it's just discoloration, it's not dirt. So again, we're cleaning the property. We're not perfect, but I think we do a really good job of keeping the property clean, and especially the area and back of the property in question. Let's see, that's enough. So it's also interesting to note that the tenant complains about the cleanliness of the property as she, at the same time, attempts to prevent the cleaning work from actually being done. On page 2 of my 3-page landlord summary, you'll see a letter we wrote to her back in March that sort of outlines what she did. Basically, a vendor was hosing down the stairs as he does from time to time. He reported to us that she yelled at him, and subsequently she called the sheriff department.
I'm going to interrupt you. As I mentioned, sir, we don't need to hear anything about any incident with the sheriffs. That's outside the scope. So if you want to move on from that, please.
I do, but it just shows how she's trying to stop us from doing our job while at the same time getting money from us supposedly not doing our job. But again, honestly, I can happy to move on, but she really acts sort of like a Karen, where she yells at a person of color and then calls the police on them.
Sir,
So
I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Unimaginable.
Typically said that we're not going to have any name callings or any labeling. So move on to your next point, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on page 3 of the landlord summary, you'll see where she did call the police saying that we were flooding her apartment, but even the police said workers were washing the floor. In that report that you're looking at on page 3 of the landlord statement, it says the police say, an independent third party, that the workers were in fact washing the floor. So that's really all I have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Ms. Michelson, I think you said you have 1 minute and 15 seconds or thereabouts. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you can do your rebuttal. You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. I do not agree that the landlord cleans the back of the building 3 times a week. He doesn't clean it 2 times a week or even 1 time a week. I'm home regularly, and especially now during the pandemic. And so I would know if someone is near my unit because my windows are open, it's hot, and no one comes by to do any cleaning. And the photos that I provided spanned the time span of a month. So it gave you an idea of the type of dirt that was on the premises at one point, and then about a month later I showed another image of dirt still on the premises in the back of the building. So again, cleaning is not being performed at the back of the building. Now, the landlord said that he included invoices. He provided those invoices, but those invoices don't prove cleaning is being performed. Anyone can create an invoice and show an invoice. What would prove that cleaning is being performed is checks that were deposited to that cleaner that show that payment was being made for those services to prove that those services were actually being performed.
That is your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for either party at this point? Commissioner O'Keefe?
It's actually a question for Ms. Regan. I just want to clarify, if I can at this time, maybe later is a better time. But it looks like the complaint, the documentation from the police is in the agenda packet and was presented to the hearing examiner, which would mean we could be considering it. I thought it's page 34. It says, I think this is a readout from the report, workers were washing the floor. Could you confirm that can be considered or no?
If it's in the record, if it's in the packet, then you can consider it.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Maggio?
Yes, 2 questions for the tenant. When the steps are being hosed down, does that water get into your unit?
Thank you. No steps it doesn't seem like they're being hosed down. It's like they're just pouring water down. But the area that they only pour this water down onto is the area directly in front of my unit. There is a pathway that goes around the back of my unit, and that area also gets dirty, but there is no hosing down or any type of water applied to that area. So it's not as if there is hosing being done to the back of the building to clean it. It's more, in my opinion, an attempt to create a difficulty for me personally.
Did you ask the cleaner ever to take time to sweep that water away from your door? Or
I think that would be considered new evidence, so I'd ask that you retract that question.
all right, I'll retract it.
Okay. Commissioner Kerpes?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for Mr. Short. Mr. Short, on January 17th, 2019, in the original hearing, you made the claim that the property was well maintained and kept clean, right?
I'm pretty sure I did, yeah.
Yeah, the hearing examiner ruled against you at that time, but yeah, that's the claim that you made. In April,
Well, I think the hearing examiner
2000
and staff ruled for me, and then the commission overturned it at the end.
No, actually, January 17th, they issued a decrease of $7.50 for cleanliness. It was the April 11th when you applied for
okay.
it. Yeah. So again, on April 11th, you did apply for a determination that you were in compliance. You made that allegation again. This time, the hearing examiner did agree with you, although the commission itself on August 2019, August 8th, disagreed with you and found that the evidence that the hearing examiner had utilized did not support the conclusion. And so now on the 30th of March, you say, as we have always done, we are still keeping the property clean. You still don't admit that you have never kept that you have not kept the maintenance or the property clean up until this point, correct? I mean, you've never admitted that. Is that correct?
No,
your stipulation is that you kept the entire property clean the entire time?
Yeah, I think, look, we can't make it perfect, and as you know, that's not the standard.
It's a yes or no. That's your.
So yeah, I think we do a good, absolutely, I think we do a good job.
All right.
There's one tenant that doesn't seem to think so, but I think we do.
I'm finished asking you questions. Thank you.
Vice Chair Topchin?
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for the landlord. So there are a lot of photographic images you provided, and thank you for that. And mostly I see the staircases, the pictures, the images of the staircases. I know the issue is the cleaning the area in the back of the property. So can you identify, and I'm glad there are the dates on those pictures. So can you identify the ones they show the back area?
Yeah, every picture is in the back of the property. Some pictures are on the staircase near the tenant's front door. Other areas are right in front of the tenant's front door. And then there's an area at the bottom of the staircase, where there's like a concrete landing down from the tenant's front door. So they're all from the back area, which
Okay,
is
so
what
there's
we're
not like a
focusing on.
large open space, like a backyard.
No, absolutely not. Not in the back of the building. It's no.
And thank you for the clarification. And the second question would be, I see the invoices, and I see the dates on the invoices for the services performed. But my question would be, typically when we have hearings, there would be copies of the checks submitted. So was there a reason why didn't you provide copies of the checks, the actual checks, clear checks?
Not just, I think we submitted enough evidence. That's it. Even without the invoices, I think all the pictures, the 46 pictures, speak volumes. But even if we would have submitted copies of checks, the tenant still would have said, "Oh, that doesn't prove anything was cleaned," right?
Okay, thank you. That's all,
Yes, sir.
Chair.
Commissioner Maggio?
Just one question for Mr. Short in regard to the walkway. Perhaps it looks dirty because maybe it looks like it's old paint, maybe peeling. Could that be so? Or
Let's see. What picture are you looking at? And I can look at the same one with you. Like the
78,
date of it. Okay. What's the date on it, sir?
dated March the 25th, 2020.
Okay, I'm just looking for that right now. March 25th, 2020. Yeah, I see one right in front of the tenant's apartment. It's just old wood. It's the one where the stairs are going up, the wooden stairs are going up.
No,
or
the cement.
one.
The cement.
Oh, okay, because there's a few on the 25th. Yeah, the cement on the right, the stairs on the left. That's the one you're looking at?
I have it on the left. It's dated March the 25th. It's the walkway, the steps coming down into the cement area.
Okay, yeah. So that is just concrete that's clean. It's old concrete. And there's probably some discoloration, but it's clean. And ditto for the stairs. Although that's not a great picture of the stairs, but.
There's no paint on that cement that was painted, or does that look?
Oh, no, absolutely. It's just concrete.
Okay.
Always been just concrete. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any further questions for either of the parties? Then we will move on to commissioner deliberations. Commissioner Charity, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Being an appellate body, we can't really reweigh the evidence. If we see that the hearing examiner had evidence that, seemed plausible for the decision that was made, then, we can't really overturn that. I'm inclined to support the staff recommendation here because I do see that the landlord provided invoices and photos. I see the tenant provided photos. It's competing evidence for sure, but it doesn't seem that the hearing examiner erred in the decision because there was evidence there to support the decision that was made. So I'm inclined to support the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Kerpes?
I will reluctantly agree. There is no reason that we should overturn the hearing examiner's decision in this, as much as I personally don't believe anything that the landlord says based upon the record. The hearing examiner was very focused on key issues, and on those issues, I believe the hearing examiner did their job in making a decision based upon the evidence.
Commissioner Maggio?
I'm going to have to believe the hearing examiner. I don't know where else to go. hopefully maybe we could give the owners some instructions to maybe go there himself when the cleaner is cleaning, to maybe guide it, if that could perhaps help it. But for now, I'm going to have to agree with the staff report.
Commissioner Martz?
I agree with the staff recommendation. There's nothing in the record to show that the hearing examiner made a wrong decision or erred in any way. I think that invoices and multiple photos is definitely enough to get us over the threshold of proof here. So I would fully support the staff's recommendation.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
I would also support the staff recommendation and the hearing examiner decision. There is substantial evidence to support it. It is not our role to reweigh the evidence. Even if it were, I believe the only evidence we're presented with were 2 photos that were not within 3 days of each other, so they didn't disprove that there was cleaning being done 3 days a week. They were about a month apart, which wasn't even in the record. So yeah, I would uphold the hearing examiner's decision.
Vice Chair Topshin?
I'm going to support the staff's recommendation. I just want to say that yes, there is evidence, photographic evidence, and invoices submitted by the landlord that show and demonstrate or suggest that the service is being conducted and the area has been cleaned according to the invoices 3 times a week. If I was the if I was the examiner, probably I would have asked for additional evidence, but you know, I was not the examiner, and obviously at this position, I cannot reweigh the evidence presented at the hearing. So that's why I'm going to support the staff recommendations, since I cannot do I can reweigh the evidence that was submitted before me. I will support the staff's recommendation. Thank you.
I will also be voting in favor of supporting staff's recommendation. I think the property owner has given us a preponderance of credible evidence of this being cleaned 3 times a week. You know, in between those 3 cleanings, there may be times when there's a dirty footprint or dust or papers that blow around, but 3 times a week is a good record for trying to keep a property clean. So I think the landlord more than proved they're making the effort to keep that property clean. And with that, we have a draft resolution 20-578. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the resolution. Do I need to say the number of it? I have to pull it up, so.
I think it's 20-578.
20-578
Okay.
to affirm the hearing examiner's decision.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Charity,
Aye.
Commissioner Kirkes,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Martz,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Keefe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Topshin,
Aye.
Chair Bergstein.
Aye. Motion passes. If either party have any questions, feel free to contact staff. Mr. Noonan, I didn't write down the phone number and email. I don't have it in front of me. Can you just repeat the direct dial for the Rent Stabilization Department and the direct email address?
Yes, I can. That phone number is 323-848-6450. The email address is rsh@weho.org. I'll now be placing both parties back in the waiting room.
And if I can ask, can we just take a quick 2-minute break? I just need another glass of water. You okay with that? We'll come back at 8:21.
wasn't me.
Here we go. Commissioner Maggio, are you back with us?
You're muted if you're talking to us.
Just waiting on Commissioner Maggio. Here he is. Mr. Noonan, have we been able to reach the parties for D4509? One of them, I think, is at a wedding. If we can dial him back and try and get him in.
I'm not sure that we can reach all three parties. However, we do have the tenant and we do have the property owner's representative.
Okay. So I think I'll call the meeting back to order at 8:23. Moving on to appeal number D-4509, 1039 North Harper Avenue, apartment number 1. Just for the parties involved, the procedure is our staff attorney, Ms. Regan.
I'm sorry, the parties don't look like they've been let into the meeting.
They're coming in now, Chair.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. So let's make sure that both parties can hear us. We should have representing that we have a tenant, Kathleen Bonagovsky.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And we have Cynthia Footer, counsel for NBM LLC.
Correct.
Wonderful. Chair, both parties can hear us.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to start the appeal. The process is that our staff attorney, Ms. Regan, will give a report to the commission. The commission will have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we'll call in the parties to make your statements. The appeal was filed by YBM Properties. So you'll have a total of 5 minutes to speak. You can split your time between initial comments, and if you wish to reserve some time for rebuttal, you may do so. Just let us know on split your time. And Ms. Bonagovsky, you'll have a total of 5 minutes, but no rebuttal time. With that, Ms. Regan.
Thank you very much. The tenant was granted a rent reduction for 3 items, the carpet and the linoleum and the paint. Ms. Bonakovsky has lived in her unit for 32 years. The carpet and the linoleum have not been replaced in that time. The unit was last painted about 9 years ago. So the hearing examiner granted a rent reduction based on that evidence. The landlord has appealed and does not admits that they received notice of the hearing, but claims that they were under the impression that the hearing would be canceled. But there's no evidence in the record that the city canceled the hearing or otherwise gave notice of any kind of a rescheduling, or even that there was a second rescheduling request. I would remind the commission that the hearing was rescheduled one time, and then the date of February 24th was the rescheduled date, and the tenant appeared at that hearing and the landlord did not. So because of that evidence in the record, the staff is recommending that the commission affirm the hearing examiner's decision. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Regan at this time? Commissioner Kerpes?
Sorry, I couldn't see if you could see me. Ms. Regan, why is it that, I'm looking at the form here, why is it that we ask the parties to choose two dates if it sounds like, based upon when I read the affidavit from the city employee, that they're already preset, the hearing dates are already not, I won't say preset, there's already certain dates, obviously, that hearings can occur on. So why is it that we ask the parties to the case to choose two dates to get back to the city?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. We want the landlord or whoever is requesting the rescheduling to reach out to the other party to try to agree on dates. But we do make it clear on the form that those dates might not necessarily be able to be honored. But there, you know, with the pandemic, there are typically days on which we can hold hearings on and on which we can't. Sometimes those coincide and sometimes they do not. But again, the city is very clear that there's no guarantee that those dates will be available.
It just seems like a shot in the dark to find even two dates. I mean, I don't know how many dates we hold hearings every week, but that's just curious to me.
Commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Regan at this time? Then we will start the testimony. I want to remind both parties that we are an appellate body. We can only consider what is currently in the record from that hearing. So anything that took place after the date of that hearing is not admissible. I ask you please to not discuss it, not bring it up. If you do, I will interrupt and stop you from that. We'll begin with Cynthia. Is it Futter? I don't want to mispronounce your name. If you can state your name and city of city of residence, and also how you'd like to divide up your time.
Okay, my name is Cynthia Futter. I represent MBM LLC. Given the lateness of the hour, I will take all 5 minutes. My client is in New York for his son's wedding and was waiting for a long time. I don't know if he's been able to join us, but I will take all the time. So thank you for the opportunity to address this. I do want to point out that my client has only owned this building since late 2016, and so what may or may not have happened for the last 32 years is something that we cannot address and have no knowledge of. But there are 3 points I'd like to address. The first is the failure to appear at the hearing. It was moved at the request of both parties, and when a date other than I thought it was 3 dates were presented, would not work. My client attempted to and reached out to the city via phone a number of times. He did get a call back that he was unable to take, and then he called some more, and therefore he was unable to appear. It was for religious reasons he couldn't do it. In hindsight, he clearly should have sent his counsel, but the thought that my client had at the time is that the current status of what was in fact going on with this property and this particular unit would have been presented as a way of fairly updating the complaint that was presented. And on that point, my client had made arrangements to have the apartment painted at the beginning of February. And the tenant asked for an extension till the end of February, which my client agreed to, again, not understanding that because this delay was at the request of the tenant, that the tenant would still appear at a hearing and seek a rent reduction for things not having been done. The tenant wanted to delay the carpet and linoleum until the painting was done, and that's certainly understandable. And the painting was completed on 3/10, but there was an agreement prior to the hearing that the painting would be done after the hearing at the end of February. When that was then done, that delayed the carpet and linoleum, and prior to the hearing, my client had an agreement with this tenant that she would take a responsibility for getting the carpet. She wanted an upgraded carpet rather than the one the landlord would put in, and then the landlord would simply reimburse her when that was done. Again, my client thought, perhaps naively, that this would be presented at the hearing even if he wasn't there, as to the current status of what was being complained about. We have now received notice from the tenant that she does not want to, because of the COVID crisis, basically do anything on replacing the carpet and linoleum till the end of the year. So my client is now in a position where the tenant having agreed or requested extensions and my client having agreed to them and her having the responsibility for finishing the carpet and linoleum, my client's now being penalized on the rent for something that is no longer in his control. And therefore, we just believe that it's just fundamentally unfair that she cannot have it both ways. She cannot both, ask for delays and agree to take the responsibility, and at the same time come before the rent control board and complain that the landlord has not done these things and therefore her rent should be reduced. So we would ask that be considered, and that really is what we have to say about the findings of the hearing examiner.
Thank you. Ms. Bonavosky, you have a total of 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, so I don't understand what the problem is. I have never done, if they would have come to me, I don't get this because I've never reduced my rent because of the fact that the painting was done. We have, we came to the agreement that yes, they were going to replace the carpeting. They didn't really talk about the linoleum so much, but yeah, so I delayed it because I certainly do not want anybody in my apartment with the COVID still going as rampant as it is. And I'm thinking at the end of the year, but I'm not sure. But I have not reduced my rent at all. So I didn't, even though the allocations were there, we had come to this agreement. And so I didn't reduce the rent. So I don't even know why we're here, to be honest with you. So.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for either party at this time? Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes, I have a question for Cynthia. I can't catch your last name. It says you said that both parties requested the hearing. I see in the packet a request to reschedule a hearing or appeal where it asks for a thorough explanation of the reason. That is only from the manager, and that says the manager will be out of town on the 7th of February, which is not that thorough. And then I see on January 27th an email from the manager to Ms. Bonavgowski that says that he received a hearing scheduled for February 7th and unfortunately cannot make that date because the manager will be out of town. So I'm seeing nothing in the record indicating that it was both parties that wanted it, and on the contrary, I'm seeing that the manager, your client, notified the tenant of the rescheduling. Could you tell me if I'm missing something or correct your statement?
Yes, I don't know if you're missing something. I thought I said it was my understanding that they had agreed upon this. I don't have those files in front of me. I was not involved. So if I am inaccurate, I will correct the statement from what documents are here. But that was the basis for my statement. That was my understanding. And that's how they had come up with these alternative dates.
That's all for me.
Commissioner Maggio, do you have your hand up?
No, nothing at the moment. Thank you.
Commissioners, Commissioner Kerpes?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So you were saying that you have voluntarily paid the regular rent. You have not reduced the dollar amount. And then is it also, would it be, I couldn't tell exactly, I mean, I believe you did, but I couldn't tell exactly from the hearing examiner's report. Do you feel that you were honest and forthright with the hearing examiner on the agreements and the understandings that you had with the landlord about when things would happen?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it seemed to be based on, go ahead.
I don't think we had come to an agreement with the carpeting at that point. They were just starting to do the painting, but we didn't, they were going
I think you
to
had still waited for you're waiting for a official confirmation, right, on the carpet.
Right. And we
about
never
when you're-
really discussed the linoleum. I said, are we going to do something with the linoleum? And Abigail said, we'll talk about that later. And then
Okay.
just recently, because I think she knew we were coming to this, she wanted to know where we stood about the carpeting and the linoleum, which was the first time she mentioned it. And I said, well, I don't want anybody in my apartment until this pandemic thing is over. So.
All right, thank you very much.
So, Ms. Regan, I have a quick question. Al's on the call. Do you want to unmute? There we go. So I'm not sure. COVID is throwing a wrinkle in so many things, and I can certainly understand why any tenant might decline non-medically necessary services. You know, something that's not causing a toxic situation. Want to put off work until COVID is more under control, but I'm just trying to think how that might impact this evening, because this issue actually arose prior to COVID. Would I be incorrect in thinking that because it began before COVID and the landlord had the opportunity prior to the issue of it being delayed for COVID should not be a part of this discussion? Help me out here.
Right. Yes. So what the commission needs to remember is that you're limited to what is in the record before the hearing examiner. And so what is in the record before the hearing examiner is that the linoleum, the carpet, the paint had not been, the maintenance standards had not been adhered to. And if the commission finds that there's evidence to support the hearing examiner's decision in the record, then you should uphold it. So all of these things that occurred after are not relevant to your decision tonight. It might be relevant to a request for a compliance determination should the landlord want to have the rent restored based on the inability to get into Ms. Bonakovsky's unit, but that's a separate issue.
Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner O'Keefe, did I see your hand?
Yeah, Ms. Regan has already mostly answered it, but just for clarification, is the standard procedure that if a decision from a hearing examiner is appealed, that the rent reduction does not take effect until after the appeal anyways, so rent is not reduced until now if it's found that as of the date of the hearing, the services were not provided.
Correct. So the rent reduction is stayed while the matter is on appeal. And then the effect, depending on the decision tonight, the tenant can begin to take the rent reduction after.
So to clarify, that's how it would work. And if, this is all, as Ms. Regan had said, as the moment of the hearing happened, it's as if that time, that's what our decision is based on. If subsequent to that something changes, at that point, the landlord can go ask to be found in compliance and have the restoration of rent.
That's right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kerpes?
So now I'm a little confused. So the question about when the rent decrease would go into effect. So if the landlord does not win her appeal this evening, or his appeal this evening, then the rent decrease would be effective after this decision, or back to when the hearing examiner made, or the hearing examiner made the decision.
Correct. So the tenant can begin taking the rent reduction and the effective date is in the decision. Okay. It's not the date of the hearing, but I think it's the date of the decision.
Yeah.
It's in the decision itself. Yeah.
Thanks.
Commissioners, any further questions?
I had one question for Ms. Regan. It's in our authority to remand it to the hearing examiner. Is that correct? Sorry, you're on. Yeah,
it is within your authority if there are grounds.
Any further questions? And we'll begin deliberations. Commissioner Charity, would you like to begin?
Yeah, I'm on the defense commissioners with this one, so I'm just going to defer my comments until I hear more commissioners speak. Obviously, I'm on the fence between remanding it and going along with the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Kerpes?
I'm fine with moving forward with the staff recommendation. I think that although when I first started reading the case, I was a little concerned about the conversations that were going back and forth, and the fact that only the land or the hearing examiner only had the tenant to hear and may not have understood all of the evidence. And I was actually going to I had some concern whether maybe perjury might have been committed, However, based upon what I can read, the limited stuff that I can read in the hearing examiner's decision, there's nothing that leads me to believe that the hearing examiner didn't have access to the information we have about the agreements, and that they are technically right, regardless of what the agreements they had to do or had between the tenant and the landlord. The fact that the items weren't completed as of the hearing, the hearing examiner made the right choice. And I'm glad to see that the two seem to still want to both meet the or satisfy the maintenance requirements. And I do understand that COVID will complicate things, but that's not for us to decide. And hopefully the city does have a process in place, ideally a process in place that allows for a suspension of a rent decrease during a time like this, where it does not require or pressure the tenant to have to let people into their unit, but at the same time, if that's the case, then the landlord also is able to temporarily suspend the rent reduction. But that's again up to the city and the determination hearing or the determination for the compliance. So I am satisfied with the hearing examiner's decision, and will be voting to. I'm still open to hearing what everyone else has to say, but it looks like I'll be voting to support the staff recommendation.
Commissioner Maggio?
Well, the ordinance is very clear, 1756-010A1 and of course A4, that these issues really have to be taken care of and should have been really a long time ago. However, if it's impossible to do any of this work because the landlord is not allowed to enter to do any of this work, then I just don't think there should be a rent reduction. The work can't be done, even though the tenant might, or rather the owner might be willing to do it. It just, I would remand it. I just feel that that would be the fair approach.
Commissioner Martz?
I'm in support of the staff's recommendation. Unfortunately, this is a black and white case in my mind. The maintenance standards are what they are. The work hasn't been done. There's nothing in our regulations or anywhere else in our ordinances that gives us the power to consider the fairness of that. And if I was, writing these rules, I would say it doesn't seem totally fair to the landlord in this case, but we're simply looking at what the hearing examiner decided and making sure that that didn't have any substantial errors in it. And if the landlord wants to do the work, there are avenues that they can pursue to do that. They have an attorney to help them with that. That's something that they're going to have to do outside of this process, but I would support the staff's recommendation here.
Commissioner O'Keefe?
I would also support the staff recommendation and the hearing examiner's decision. We are to look at this as of the date of the hearing. Everything that happens subsequent to that is irrelevant for our purposes. That would only be relevant for a compliance determination, not for the status of work at the time of the hearing. The tenant let the landlord know the work was needed back in August. It was not completed within 30 days. She then filed for the work to be done in October. It looks like, we can't consider the evidence that the landlord submitted, but I believe by his own assertions, he didn't even start it till after the original date of the hearing that he had asked for being postponed. So I think that, she testified at the hearing, she showed up for the hearing. He had availed himself of the process to ask for a changed hearing date before. He knew how to make the request in writing. It's very clear on the form how you make a request in writing for a change of a hearing date. He did not do so. He merely failed to show up on February 24th. The hearing that was already scheduled went forward at that new time after he and he alone had asked for a postponement. According to Ms. Fario with the rent stabilization staff, she had talked to him and told him about the date, so I see no grounds at all for overturning the hearing examiner's decision. There was substantial evidence for it, and anything that happens subsequent is a question for a compliance determination, not for this appeal.
Commissioner Charity, would you like to make your comments?
Yeah, the discussion of the dates has tipped me over the fence to support the staff recommendation. It is an old matter, and
Vice Chair Topchin?
Thank you, Chair. To keep it short, to keep it brief, I concur with what Commissioner O'Keefe has said, very specifically in regards to the dates and the services that have to be completed. And I don't believe that based on the evidence presented, we should disturb the examiner's findings. And so therefore, I'm going to support the staff's recommendation for this matter. Thank you.
I'm also in support of staff's recommendation. This is a very clear-cut case for me. The work was not done as the date of the hearing. Once it is done, the landlord can file for a compliance determination. If we do uphold the hearing examiner's decision, I would suggest that perhaps the counsel for the building owner or the owner contact our department to find out, I said, we're all in uncharted territories. There's nothing in our ordinance dealing with a pandemic. To see if there might be something to work around on this, but I would be voting in favor of upholding staff's recommendation. With that, we have draft resolution RSC 20-579. Would someone like to make a motion?
I can do that. I make a motion to pass resolution RSC 20-579, a resolution of the Rent Stabilization Commission of the City of West Hollywood, affirming the hearing examiner's decision on D-4509 at 1039 Harper Avenue, unit number 1.
We have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Charity,
aye.
Commissioner Kerpes,
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio,
Aye.
Commissioner Martz,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Keefe,
Aye.
Vice Chair Topchin,
Aye.
Chair Bergstein.
Aye. Motion passes. If either party has any questions, feel free to reach out to staff, and Peter will once again give us the phone number and the direct email address. I apologize for not writing it down.
Not a problem, Chair. The phone number that you can reach staff at is 323-848-6450. That's 323-848-6450. You may also send us an email at rsh@weho.org. I'll now be placing both parties back in the waiting room.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Nunes.
you.
Thank you. With that, we will go on to item 10, new business. I'm not aware of any new business on the agenda. Item 11, Mr. Secretary, are there any members of the public waiting to speak this evening?
There are no members of the public waiting to speak this evening.
Thank you. And to item 12, commission comments. Do any commissioners have any comments? Commissioner O'Keefe.
Yeah, the second appeal today raised an issue that I'm wondering if maybe at some future meeting we might want to look up. I feel like we've seen many cases where right before the date of a hearing, that's when the landlord begins doing the work, and in some cases there's a file for a continuance and it's after the originally scheduled hearing date. And I'm wondering if, in fairness to tenants who have already waited many months or years for the work to be done, if perhaps any continuance should be decided based on the date of the originally scheduled hearing. So, just raising that for something we might want to consider in the future.
Commissioner Kerpes.
A couple items. First of all, thank you to the two individuals, the tenant and landlord, in this last appeal. I think that this conversation, I don't think it's actually that unique. I think this is just kind of common conversations between landlords and tenants when work needs to be done in an apartment. My concern at the very beginning of the case was that the tenant was using that to violate our process or violate the timely process. But I don't, after reading both sides and understanding what was actually happening, I think it was just a normal everyday thing where you talk to your landlord about trying to figure out when the best day to come in to fix the oven is. And I don't see any problems with this case. I do have a question about the form. The form for hearing an appeal, unless there's another side to it, and there may very well be. The one that I'm reading doesn't say anything about you not getting your dates. It just says select your 2 dates. So maybe we want to look at that form again just to make sure that it is clear. Because to me, it does seem unreasonable for us to ask us individuals to name 2 dates and then set a date prior to those 2 dates. The last thing I had was regarding something that was brought up in this case, which I don't think it'll be an issue. I mean, she's been in the unit for a long time. I don't know why she would want to invest money in the carpet if she's going to be leaving anytime soon. But it made me think, in those cases where tenants work out with their landlords, where they will pay a certain amount to upgrade. In this case, it's the carpet. I don't see anything wrong with that. But what it does, what landlords may need to be reminded is that when she moves out, that's a high quality carpet that will need to be replaced the next time their tenant circulates through. So either they need to rip out the carpet immediately, which is absurd, or they need to understand that when the next tenant moves in, and then that becomes a service, an upgraded service that the landlord is now committed to. So I just want landlords to keep that in mind, not that I want tenants to suffer in lesser ideal situations, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kirby, do you want to step into your day job role and talk about the census real briefly, just to remind everyone?
Sure. We are way low on our 2020 census response rates. And we only have until October 31st to get those in. I haven't looked today, but we're about 56%, which is much lower than what we were in 2010. There are several activities, and we're going to, my office, working for Assemblymember Bloom, we're going to be sending out some information in the next couple of weeks where we'll be asking for volunteers to help us call targeted areas to encourage people to get out the count, is what we're calling it. So look for those in your email boxes. And the City of Los Angeles also does this. So if you have a contact with the City of Los Angeles, you can call the mayor's office if you'd like to help out this way. But everyone let their neighbors know to register or to be counted for the census. It's billions of dollars, over $115 billion, I believe, that the state of California receives, and that's all based upon population.
Do you by any chance remember the web link for the census?
MyCensus2020 or mycensus2020.gov.
Say that one more time.
I think Kellen knows. My2020census.gov. I believe.
Thank you. Don't
Just
give
look
them the
at
wrong link.
My2020 and it'll pop up.
Any other comments from commissioners?
That was correct.
Okay. Going on to item 13, staff comments, Mr. Noonan.
I just wanted to thank the commissioners for their flexibility and do a little after meeting thank you to the participants for their patience as well. So we did find another little hiccup in our system that we're going to correct, and so that we continue to have very smooth running meetings. So thank you all.
Thank you. And with that, we will adjourn until our next meeting with the Rent Stabilization Commission.
Wait,
I think we have one.
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Maggio, sorry about
I have one
that.
question for the manager. I've been asked by affordable unit tenants if there will be a recertification this year of their rent.
That is happening, and we'll be happy to follow up with them directly. Thank you.
It is happening, you're saying, this year? Or?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is happening. It happens every year, and that's in the process right now. So we will we'll follow up. It's your property owner. The property owner is doing those, so we will follow up directly with the tenants.
Thank you.
I had one quick comment just to congratulate Chair Bergstein on your smoking initiative. I know it wasn't everything you wanted, but it just shows tenacity and that we can make positive differences in the city. So congratulations.
Thank you. It was about a 3.5-year process, I think, since I first brought it before this commission, and certainly was a learning process for me. I think that what was passed by council was not what we had hoped for, but it's a starting point, and we'll see what transpires over the time. But there is now, when the ordinance is put into place on second reading, I think all new tenancies will be smoke-free, so that's a good start. But thank you for recognizing that. Commissioners, any further comments? Then we will adjourn until our next meeting, which is 7 p.m. Thursday, September 10th, 2020, by teleconference. We're adjourned. Thank you.